are going to discuss the different type of angle pair relationships. We'll get into adjacent angles, vertical angles, complementary angles, supplementary angles, most commonly referred to as a linear pair. Adjacent angles are two angles that are next to each other. Angle 1 and angle 2 share a common side. The common side is the ray that they have in common. So angle 1 and angle 2, they are next to each other and they share that red ray in between the two of them. Vertical angles are angles that are across from each other. They are also considered congruent. So angle 1, the measure of angle 1 is equal to the measure of angle 2. In another diagram, you'll see angle 3 and angle 4 pop up, where angle 3 and angle 4 are across from each other, and they are also congruent. Congruent is talking about the same size and the same shape, meaning equal measure. So all vertical angles are congruent, meaning they have the same measurement. A key factor to remember. Complementary angles are angles that have a sum of 90. Sum is referring to adding. So when we add two angles and it totals 90 degrees, they are complementary. A lot of times you'll see a little box in the corner indicating a 90-degree angle, telling us that angle 1 plus angle 2 is going to equal 90 degrees. Supplementary angles are angles that have a sum of 180 degrees, so they add to 180. Sometimes they can be connected, like this diagram. Other times they could be separate, like we could have an angle here that's 120, and in a separate diagram, an angle over here that's 60, telling us that those two angles are supplementary. They add to 180. Most of our diagrams are going to look like this, in which they are describing a linear pair. So a linear pair, you're going to see a line indicated, like this red line. And the two angles that are formed from that line, meaning a set of adjacent angles, so two angles that are next to each other, or their non-adjacent sides, form a line. Angle 1 and angle 2 here form a linear pair. And in this definition, the red represents the two non-adjacent sides. This green line, that represents the adjacent side. So the side that they don't connect with, or they don't have in common, forms a line. A linear pair is a way that helps us describe supplementary angles. So linear pair also adds to 180 degrees. So our four types are adjacent, vertical, complementary, and supplementary angles. We're going to go over some examples on the next few slides on how to name some of these angles and find the measurements. If we needed to name these angles, sometimes they're not named or labeled with numbers. Instead, we have these points that the angles are formed by. In this diagram, we have two angles, one's 20 degrees, one's 70. If we add those, it equals 90 degrees. So we have two angles that are complementary. To name the two angles that are complementary, we can identify our 20-degree angle. Let's say I put an angle 1 here. So this angle is angle AOB. So it goes from A to O and out to B. That's how we can name it. The vertex, or the kind of the corner point of any angle, has to be the middle letter. The other angle we have, I could say this is angle 2, and this is considered angle COB. Starts at C, goes to O, and all the way out to B. Sometimes we have vertical angles. And vertical angles are formed when we have two lines that intersect. To name all of the vertical angles that we have here, sometimes it might help to label these as 1, 2, 3, and 4 like you're used to seeing. And we know that angles 2 and 4 are vertical. Angle VOS, so it goes from V to O out to S. And angle 2 is represented by angle UOT. So from U to O and out to T. And we could continue this. We could identify angles 1 and 3 using our letters that are formed from those. And that would be angle SOU. So here's SOU and angle TOV. That's what's formed by angle 3. So when we don't have the numbers, you can place the numbers in there to help your brain, but we do need to identify them with the following letters. Naming the supplementary angles, linear pair. There are 4 sets when we have two lines that intersect. If I label these as 1, 2, 3, and 4, I'm not going to highlight all of them, but you should notice that angle 1 and 2, those two angles are supplementary. Those two angles would be labeled SOU and UOT. And as we continue, angle 2 and 3 are supplementary. So I'll use a different color. Angle 2 to angle 3 is supplementary, and those angles are represented as angle UOT and angle TOV. Three and angle 4 would be supplementary. That angle is represented by TOV and VOS. And our final set would be like angle 4 and angle 1, angle VOS, and angle SOU. If we need to find angle measures, when two lines intersect, if I'm looking at this diagram, vertical angles are congruent. Angle X and this 49 degrees are vertical, which means X is 49 degrees. When we look at our second diagram, those are two lines that intersect. Those angles are next to each other, forming a linear pair, meaning they are supplementary. So I can take 180, subtract 77, and we would know because they are a linear pair that X is equal to 103 degrees. And our final example, when I see this little red box, that indicates a 90-degree angle. I mean, those two angles are complementary. So we need to figure out what angle plus 29 degrees is going to get us 90, and that would be 61. So X is equal to 61 degrees. Our final example is we have two lines that cross, and we have three angles we need to find. Let's start with angle 1. I notice that looks like my linear pair, my supplementary angle. So angle 1 plus angle 51 is going to equal 180. So if I subtract 180, I take 180 and subtract 51, I would get 129 degrees. So angle 1 is 129 degrees. To find angle 2, I notice that angle 2 and the 51 degrees are across from each other, meaning they are vertical. So angle 2 must also be 51 degrees. To find angle 3, we've got options. We know that the 51 degrees in this, it's supplementary, or you can notice that angle 1 and angle 3 are vertical, which means it has to be the same thing as angle 1, so angle 3 must be 129 degrees.